Call the meeting to order. Pledge allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. It's safe.
All right.
President Dom,
Here.
Vice President Everard,
Here.
Treasurer Zimmerman,
Present.
Secretary Wazor,
Here.
Trustee Leahy. Here. Trustee Zurich
Here.
and Trustee Zeller. Here.
Right. Everybody's present. 4.0 public comments, number 1. Anybody out there?
Does not appear to have any raised hands.
Thank you. Okay, we'll bounce right into 5.0 presentations. Yeah. You want to?
Yeah, I'll take the first thing we have here is just an update where we are on the general election on the proposition. That was just last week. And we are still too close to call. So for the conservation district's ballot proposition. So they have until next Tuesday, the 19th, and currently, it's gonna pull up here if I can do so on the,
They keep that current?
they've been updating
Okay,
the total number of ballots outstanding, the ballots that are considered that have been returned but not counted, so nothing's been counted yet. So as of the 13th, so yesterday and today, there were a total of oh, 4,493 ballots that have been returned and not counted. 754 of provisional that have been uncounted, and then vote by mail that were not yet received. They're kind of out. They may never come in. Who knows? 5,807.
Oh, that's quite a bit.
So that, but that, so that process. So, and when I took the screenshot here, I don't have.
So we have a chance out of how many then?
Well, currently, it would be the vote returned by mail, 4,493,
Right.
and then.
And we were short 300 or just under.
So 279,
You're right.
and
So I mean, there's
so,
a pretty good chance.
yes,
There's a
plus
real
one.
good chance.
Yeah. Because I think the demographics of that, the people that voted early would lean towards our proposition.
Well, I think that the early ones would,
Would lean that way.
Yeah.
That's what we're hoping.
Again, I just wanted also to say, again, a thank you on behalf of the board, but to thank the board, to thank the staff that were out making educational presentations, doing our regular tour of duty. I want to thank particularly the Vote Yes Committee for the proposition that worked hard to advance the proposition, and as well as the voters that came out to vote.
Well, it wasn't from lack of effort. I think everybody put a good effort in, so be proud of that.
Yeah.
So, good. Well, hopefully.
So we should know that our Tuesday at the meeting.
Tuesday's meeting, we should know.
Potentially, we may not. It depends on when they post and decide to count. So if they do it
Right,
after 7
they might
o'clock,
do it
we
7
may be
o'clock.
done, and we will not know till the following day.
wouldn't that be torture?
I know. All right. Move to 6.0, business, let's review the regular meeting agenda, the consent agenda, anything on that needs to be explained or taken?
Yes, question on one of the items.
Yeah.
13.6,
Okay.
authorizing executive director to enter an agreement with, I'm sorry, not the sheriff's, there was a snowmobile one.
Oh, the 7.
There it is, yeah. So is everything worked out with them or are we asking you to work it out? Elizabeth,
Well, these are the new agreements for the trails that we've agreed to
okay,
for the following year, and they're just the various contracts, agreements between each of the different clubs.
okay,
There is nothing that has not been approved or advanced forward by New Trails by the board or anything else like that, because that's not part of this. This is just what they will be allowed to use this next
okay.
season.
I just wanted to be sure that we weren't past this on you said, work out the deal with them. Then.
Oh, no, this has all been brought forward based on knowledge. Our staff out of operations has reviewed all of this to get the agreement in order.
That's why.
And that's where the agreement will be current. That's what will be available to use this season. We have some.
The one new one is that Queen Anne.
Mhm.
It was on the list last year, but the association was unable to make the connection through the private landowner. I think they've got that ironed out, so that should be a bona fide trail this year.
Oh, okay.
So at least that's the word I had the last time we spoke with anybody there.
Well, yeah, because the owner passed away and then the children are in charge now.
Yeah,
so.
they thought they had a pretty good chance of making that, and and I did talk to them in early October, and they thought they were, close to having that done. So hopefully that one will go through.
Good. Anybody else have anything on any of the consent agenda items? Looks like a change order for 1310 for Schroeder. Looks self-explanatory. So we're
Found a culvert that was
Yeah.
buried.
we just need to replace the culvert and.
Yeah, still one, but yeah, need to be replaced.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay. Guess we'll move on to Andy.
All right, Andy, I'm gonna stop sharing. You want to share from your screen? Right, and I'll make you a co-host. So.
Okay, we're doing the preliminary draft budget.
Correct, and so tonight, what we've normally done is you're gonna see, and you'll give a presentation, just a preliminary of what the tentative will be. This is your first chance. You've received the full document. It does have the narrative. And we're still awaiting some sections that will be populated by the individual projects. That are the pictures and the more detailed of the different grants, et cetera, that go with that. That'll be forthcoming when you see the tentative in January, but tonight you're gonna see kind of how this is looking.
Okay,
Yeah, so as Elizabeth said, if you remember back in August, we basically provided kind of a draft outline of projections. Looking for guidance from the board to start building the 26 budget. So this is the slide we showed you in August. These are the things we're looking for consensus for. One was to capture that 4.6% operational increase from the PTEL levy, which the board approved, and that was the September levy that went forward. And then we included a 3.5% of ATB across the board wage increase. There was kind of a general consensus for that. So again, that was in the information in August. It's still 3.5%. It was sent out to you last week in this preliminary version of the budget. We're looking for a non-personnel cost increase that will grow by 3%. And then lastly, we had capital spending at that time of 488,000. And then we had that light blue question mark, because we know it was only, we're only 4 months into the year. We need more things are going to be added between then and now. And then the same with the reserve spend, as those capital went up or anything else we found and added to the budget from August, we knew that total reserve spend we presented in August, 971,000, was probably going to grow a little bit. It has, every time we've gone through this process. Looking at the 26 revenues, unchanged again from August. As we all know, we're very heavily relied on for property taxes, 83% of our operational revenue. The other second biggest part of that is the farm lease is 7%. This is the property tax revenue as a percentage of total operating revenue going back for the last 16 years. And again, always been in that low 80s. If you look at 22, 3, and 4, you see there's a downtrend there. And again, we had other revenues that were growing. The farm lease income was growing. The state PPRT was growing. Now 24, 25, 26, you start to see that ratio go back up. And there's two reasons for that. One is the board's let us capture more of the PTEL levy in the last 3 levy years than we did prior to that. And then two, some of the other revenues as we're aware of are going down. And then quickly, just to recapture that PTEL increase, we were allowed the 3.4% inflationary increase, which gave us $309,000. Estimated new development, this number is, not finalized yet, but we estimated for the budget of $108,000. So collectively, that was $417,000 operational PTEL increase, or 4.6%. That won't change whether the referendum is successful or not. It's still going to be our operating tax revenue, because as we know, we debate anything coming back from a successful proposition. And then something I show all the time, but I don't want to leave out because I think it's so critical to our story. This shows over the last 12 years, the average increase of the district's PTEL levy has been just 1.6%. Under PTEL, we could have had almost double that, or 2.9%. Collectively, that's $10.2 million, $10,278,000 we could have levied, we didn't. That money is obviously saved by the taxpayers. And more importantly, is we would have additional annual operating capacity, tax capacity of 1.5 million. If you look at the budget back in August, and you look at what we sent you last week, that 1.5 million would have more than fixed the immediate shortfall, right? And then started to position us to deal with some of the bigger projects that we know we need funding for. Looking at the farm lease revenue, we showed this in August. That blue line is the futures from 2022 as we were putting together the 24 budget. It was 590 in October at this time in 22. It stayed right about there. So we budgeted 590. That's where it played out, the February average, which is based on. Last year at this time, it was 520. It stayed consistent until January, and then it dropped out. So we budgeted that 520 for the fiscal year we're in now. But that got 24, and our average December future is only 466. So we're down about $100,000 in this budget year. Actually, we're more than that.
Good now? Nope.
No.
You turn your volume down.
Yeah. Okay. So just trying to get the slides that he's looking at. Okay, they're up and no echo.
Okay, I think you're good.
So the orange line is where we are today. So that's the December 25 futures of corn price. That 455 is what we showed you in August. That's where it was basically in August. So we use that when we drove the August assumptions. It's down to 440 when I developed this final and set it out. It's still there today, actually. It's right around that. So far so good. That is what we budgeted is 440 going forward. Again, we won't know this number until February 25 because it's the average close of December 25 corn for the whole month of February 25. So we never know it. We just do our best job guesstimating.
That's in the lease of the farm lease?
That's driving that farm lease ad. So this shows the budget actual farm lease revenue, and I'm starting with fiscal years 23 and 24, just to show. There's a pretty big decline there. You can see from 23 to 24, it's going down approximately $300,000 in revenue, but the price of corn in those 2 years didn't change, 590 and 591. So as a reminder, we had to pull out 800 acres of productive ag leases from the general fund and segregate that revenue into the dedicated accounts to basically provide for the restoration of the Coon Creek watershed. That's under the requirements of the grant agreement, right? So it's a big loss of revenue right there, it's 300,000. Then looking at this current year that we're in today, we budgeted 940,000. Like I said, we budgeted 520 a bushel. It's closed out at 466 in February. So we're down about $100,000. 840,000 is our estimate of where we'll be year to date at the end. And then in August, we showed you 790 based on 455 corn. Now we reduced that to 440. So from August, we're down another, actually it's $44,000 from what we showed you in August. And in the big picture, you go back to 23, where we had almost $1.5 million of ag lease. That's the actual revenue. So we're budgeting now half of that. So we lost about $750,000 in revenue just in those 3 years. Program fees, this is unchanged. Same slide we showed you in August. We expect it to grow 10.6%. Most of that's by the education programs and the success of the outdoor beer festival. And then looking at that state personal property replacement tax, which makes up a big part of our income the last couple of years. We know it's very hard to predict, and there's a couple of reasons, and we went into a lot of detail of it in the last few presentations, but one of the first is the state sends out an estimate, but their fiscal year is way off line with the district. So they just sent out their fiscal year 25 estimate at the end of October. And it only covers 3 of the months we're talking about in 26. So that estimate only covers the last 3 months of our fiscal year. Secondly, their estimates have been off 20 to 30%. Sometimes they're close, but many years they've been way off. A big part of that, as we showed the slide before, they're diverting funds out of that PPRT fund. They don't have control of it. They don't seem to be able to provide any rationalization or projections for it. But if you look at that last year, 2023, the big red bar, that's 390 million that was deciphered out of there. So this is fiscal year 25. Again, green is actual, blue is budget. So that last column is where we are today, right? We budgeted 450,000. Based on what I've seen come in and my expectations, it's only going to be 308,000. That's the same prediction I had in August. It's unchanged. I still think that's reasonable. That's what I'm budgeting for 26 on. So a summary of the revenues on. This is proposed in this budget versus what we showed in August. So farm-raised revenue going down from August, $44,000. Investment income going down 11,000. I reduced my interest expectations because the federal rate obviously is 10, as well as there's a little less reserves in this. So collectively from August, we're going down $55,000 from what we showed you a few months ago. Back that up. And then to look at our proposed, so looking at the proposed tentative budget revenues now to the actual budget. So this is budget to budget. I just showed you budget to what we showed you in August. This is budget to fiscal year 25. And you can see our tax revenues going up 4%, budget to budget, 355,000. But your farm lease revenue and your PPRT is going down about the same amount. So those two basically offset the increased tax revenue. So when you look down budget to budget year over year, we're basically showing no increase in revenue, $229. And again, that's not a lot different than what we showed in August. On the expense side, moving it along. Let's see. So starting with the other operating, this is non-personnel, non-capital expenditures, and this is just showing you generally the summary of what these expenses include and the percentage they make up of our total operating, of the total other operating expenditures. You can see they're largely non-discretionary items, utilities, fuels, property taxes that we pay, legal, things like that. So in August, we looked at the inflation of the CPI. It was about heading around 3% for the calendar year in 24. So we asked the board to give us the consideration to allow the operational budgets to grow by 3%. And we had a general consensus for that. As of October, it was 2.9% year to date, year over year, calendar year to date. So it's still right around that 3% mark with 2 months to go. And then as a reminder, the column in blue shows the amount we allowed the operating budgets to grow by as the managers were building their operational budgets. You see a lot of zeros in there. And at the very bottom, over all 16 of those years, the total growth was only 4.5%. You look at inflation, it was almost 39%. So our managers had to basically reduce their budgets by 34, 35%. That's how we've been able to largely deal with offsetting, not being able to grow the PTEL levy increase year over year, or taking a very small growth. So in August, we hadn't given the budgets out, obviously, right? So I took the 25 budgeted number, grew by 3%. That total was 73,465. Now we're proposing that that's actually going to go down from August by $95,493. And if you look at this proposed budget to the current budget 25, we're actually showing a decrease year over year of 22,000 or almost 1%, 0.9%. So how can that be? So the big one is we've had an increase in this fiscal 26 budget of 13% for seasonal labor. So approximately the total need for seasonal labor hours have grown by 13%. Most of that's in the operations budget. Some of it's in Lipner, a little bit in education. Because we limited their budgets to 3% growth, in order for them to grow that seasonal labor, they had to reduce non-personnel expenditures by the same amount to offset it. So that's a big part of that. That's 45,000, almost a third of, or half of that $90,000 difference. The other big shift is in this current budget of 25, we have about $40,000 that was budgeted for proposition initiatives. So getting information out, doing communications, helping with the survey information. So that was part of the 25 budget. Obviously it's zeroed out, not part of the 26, so that goes down. I put in just a few other things that are obvious and known that are going down. There's 350 plus expense lines in the general fund. And as you look at the detail that we gave you, you'll see some go up a little, some go down a little bit. But all in all, this accounts for $120,000 of deductions year over year.
What's the contractual services?
Everything from, could be,
Which ones are you gonna,
what's that?
so which ones does that account for?
Oh, this would have been in the admin 04 department, 488, so all staff development budget. And then on the personnel side, again, we showed the green line is the rate of inflation, and then the blue was the wage and, I'm sorry, I got that backwards. The blue line was the rate of inflation, and the green line is the across the board wage approved by the board. And as you can see, we've done a really good job of keeping pace with inflation. And then COVID hit, we had hyperinflation for the 2 years of 21 and 22. So obviously we fell behind then. We asked the board for consideration of a 3.5% increase, got a general consensus for it. Again, that was in the information in August. It's what's in the 26 proposed budget today. We do have some additional information to go with that. So this is a survey where agencies are self-reporting on a website. It's been going on for several months as they're looking at building their 25 budgets. These are expected and requested increases. They're not approved, right? It's the other directors saying, hey, here's what we're asking for. Here's what we think we're going to get. You see the blue one highlighted there is a county. They're looking at a 3.5% merit. The median of that's probably 4%. And I didn't do an average, but it's, probably 370, 380. There's more fours than threes. So that 3.5, I think, falls right in line with what we're seeing out there in the local marketplace. And then we showed you this schedule last month too. So the across the board wage increase was 3.5%. We have anniversary increases for people who reach their 4, 7, and now 15-year. The total cost of those altogether generates about 0.7% increase year over year. So a little less than 1%. We've eliminated the volunteer coordinator position, so that reduces the total cost by 0.4%. We have some lower wage in the new hires as we build this out, so that was another reduction of 0.3. Officers and sergeants, we didn't have an FOP contract that was implemented, it's a little bit higher than we anticipated. Total cost, again, increases 0.1%. You add it all together, and then year over year, August, we showed you an expected increase of 3.6. Now to that, we're going to add the seasonal wage growth of 0.7%. And then some other proposed changes, which are relatively small, but collectively about 0.2, and I believe they're going to be talked about in executive session tonight. So totally that 3.6 goes up to a 4.5% year over year total wage cost. Again, 65% of the district will receive 3.5%, right? About 20 employees will be set to receive something for their 4, 7, and 15 tenure. So don't think that 4.5% represents that people in the district are all getting 4.5. The vast majority are just getting the 3.5. And that's assuming you're good standing, good performance. So as we look at the 26 budget versus the August presentation, it goes up under wages by 59,000, 44,000, that's the seasonal increase. And then budget to budget, again, we see it grow by 4.5%. Health insurance, not really changed from August. The rate increase is 5.4% and equals about $62,000, assuming you have the same people in the same plans. It's kind of the way to monetize what's the rate increase versus what's the total cost increase. We know each year employees select different plans. We've just started the open enrollment right now, and ends November 19th, so we don't have that information. But if you look at the budget 25 versus the when that was generated versus what we know, again, not with this new open enrollment, and I was building the budget out for 25 back in the fall of 23, right? So there's been changes. We have 4 people that have moved from single to a higher level of coverage, single plus children, spouse, or whatever. We also have 1 additional family. So that adds another $35,000 in total estimated budget 25 over budget 26. Again, we showed the same slide in August, it looked largely the same. I think it was a 9% increase, we went up $1,800, and that's just me tweaking my calculations as I'm running this all through. So 9.2% increase year over year, or $98,000. IMRF going down again, our required contribution rates, 6th year in a row, that's good news. In August, we showed a 3.3% or $17,000 increase. In this 26 budget, it's a little bit higher because of those wage increases we talked about. It goes up about $2,000 or 3.6%. So looking at the proposed 26 budget versus what we presented in August, we're seeing total personnel grow by $68,000. And then if you look at this proposed tentative budget, well, actually I got the August one against the budget. So these are the percentages we showed you in August, right? Wages growing by 3.6, retirement 3.4, total personnel by 4.2. And now if I put in the tentative budget we're proposing, you can see how those change compared to the budget, fiscal 25 budget run today. So the wages go to that 4.5, and then total personnel grows from 4.2 increase to a 5% increase. Does that make sense?
Is there an added position as well?
Well,
Not from August, it's not, no. There's some changes from those, go into those, that's at 0.2%.
this issue we're gonna talk about.
But the biggest part of that, again, is the seasonal labor increase. So then a quick summary, you can see it on mine. So this is again, August versus the proposed tentative. Total revenue is going down 55,000 from what we showed you 3 months ago. Total expenditures going down $27,000, so that's a good thing. So the net surplus we projected in August was 483,000, or I'm sorry, net deficit. I wish it was a surplus. Net deficit of $483,000 is now growing a little bit by 28 grand. So that's going to grow to $511,000 for proposing. And then if I just compare the same thing budget to budget, again, 26 budget to 25, revenue is constant, it's unchanged. Because we have a tax levy increase, but it's offset by the other decreases. Total personnel growing by that 5%. Other operating going down almost 1%. And then total expenditures before capital then growing 3.7% year over year. Budget 25 versus proposed budget 26. And the net deficit of the current budget win is $100,000 before capital, and that'll grow to $511,000 before capital. The one thing to remember too is that this is how it shows on paper. We almost always do better because of vacancies, positions that aren't filled or whatever. So 511 startling, probably had closer to 3 or 4, but this is how it looks. Just a couple more slides and then we're done. On the capital outlays, we showed you $488,000 of capital outlays, provided you all the detail of all the assets back in August. This is the same slide we showed. We're proposing that they grow by $95,000 to $583,000. The increases include reappropriations we didn't have in August. So we're adding $25,000 of reappropriations. Those are things in this current budget. We're not sure if we're going to get them done. So we're putting them in here to be safe. We might get some of those done between now and the end of the year. Then these are the new additional requests. So we had to upgrade for the electrical at Henry's shop. We had $10,000. We've increased that to $20,000. Building demolition. Prairie Trail North repairs, $26,000. Brookdale Tuck Pointing, $25,000. Total new requests done over August of $82,200. And then we had one reduction. There was some software in here where a big piece of the software, there's actually 2 years licensing, annual licensing. So that's the total cost if we bought it and paid for 2 years of licensing. So I backed that out and moved that to where it belongs, which is an expenditure under IT software services.
Everything seems like reasonable, and then you see file cabinet, $5 grand. Everything else makes sense, and then a file cabinet.
Fireproof fire cabinet. They're pretty expensive.
Pretty happy.
Is that many? Is that over several sites or?
No, I believe it's here for Brookdale administrative for our permanent record requirements, and they're big.
They're like big safes.
They
Yeah,
are,
there's electricity that it's cheap. They both are every now and then.
our permanent records, we're required to keep them in fireproof safes to protect them.
Right.
or I'm sorry, file cabinets,
How long do we have to keep those records?
permanent records,
Oh, permanent.
permanent records, correct.
Gotcha. So we need more space.
We are running out,
Yeah. Gotcha.
correct. They're rather large, but still,
They're very heavy.
they're extremely heavy,
Some people dig a hole and make a vault.
right?
So in third grade, when you broke that window, they have it.
All right.
All right, just two more summaries, and again, tentative budget in green that we're proposing versus what we showed in August. Total revenues, we had an operating deficit in August of 483,000 before capital. So that grew to 511,000 and increased by 28,000 before capital. Now we're adding $95,000 of additional capital, more than what we showed in August. So that total deficit we projected in August of $1,071,000 has grown to $1,195,000, or gone up by 123,000. And then budget to budget, revenues are flat. We talked about that. Expenditures up 3.7% in total before capital. We see an operating deficit growing from 100,000 in 25 this current budget year to 511,000 in the proposed 26 budget, again before capital. For capital in this current budget, we had 1.5 million, 1,448,000. A lot of that was reappropriations. It was a big number. This 26 proposed is only 583, so that's a decrease of 864,000. So that plays favorable as you go and look at the reserve spend. So in this current budget we had a planned reserve spend in the general fund of 1.6 million. Now we'd be looking at just the 1.2 million in the 26 budget. Okay, I just have one more slide. On the camp budget, so in September, I think John and Amy gave you the detail of all the camp plans, right? Both the dedicated account and the camp fund, all those projects. They're not changed. Everything's the same in the budget you have in front of you, and they're all detailed again in the budget. There'll be more detail to come, as Elizabeth talked about those. But the one change we do have in the camp fund, we had $1.5 million in August. We need to replace the fire alarm system, and it apparently is very expensive, $120,000. That's under the coordination of John Kramer. So the questions about it, he can answer more of them, but that's the only change to the camp plan. So both the dedicated and the camp are just that one project. One final statement, I guess, too, is many of the camp projects that are in the 26 budget right now, at least 600,000 of that total might get completed this year. We don't know. So they're going to be safe, right? Because if we don't get them done, we need the appropriation to get them done next year. If we get them done soon enough and there's time, we may back them out and revamp the budget. We'll have to revamp a lot of it anyway, if and when the proposition is successful, because then we'll have to show that additional revenue. We'll have to bring in the abatement through the debt service. So there'll be a lot of changes going on there. That is it.
Andy, I just asked about the farm leases. Do you see farm lease revenue trending down for the future because of the Brazil production or just typical market circumstances?
Well, what we experienced is twofold. One, if we're taking acres out of production to restore them. We had the big chunk of 800, which was a fifth of our total acres at that time. So that was a big hit. And then we're just subject to the price of corn, right? If it's going from 520 down to 440, that's significant. It's a loss of revenue. Where it goes, I have no idea. I mean, I'm not a farmer. Krista probably answered better efficiency.
Well, a lot of it was, we had record crops this year. And,
Right.
And so also it's corn and soybeans, so that just brought the price of those commodities way down.
Where does the Brazilian increased production come into play?
Well, that's gonna flood the world market,
Right.
so it's gonna draw, revenues are gonna be a lot less, because of they have so much, the prices just go down, supply and demand.
But I mean, if it can still, it's not completely going to direct everything down because you could have a bad year and the price
If you have
go
a
up.
weather scare next year,
Yeah.
obviously, that would, take quite a bit though, there's quite a surplus
In general, globally.
globally,
For the Midwest farmers was the Mississippi River was so low, cost of deliveries, the farmers got less, yet it cost more because they had to take a lot of it by train and truck as opposed to
or half
barges.
barges,
Yeah.
the drought is pretty real.
What's storage like? If it's such a great year this year, how long does that surplus last in terms of its viability?
Again, it all depends on weather and usage, what's produced in other parts of the world. Where, let's say China is buying X amount of ours, they switch to somebody else, then we have all that on hand and it doesn't move.
I was saying about storage. I mean, like.
Our storage
actually
capacity is
in it,
full right now.
It has a shelf life, right? I mean,
Somewhat,
keep it forever.
not forever, but you can keep it 4 to 6 years.
That's what I'm wondering. Okay, 4 to 6 years.
Wow.
Yeah, it's kept there. So, any questions on our budget? It's pretty much what we expected. Everything looking. Any questions, anything like that?
Thanks, Ian.
The proposition doesn't really play into this budget at this point.
Yes.
Correct.
What's that?
The proposition, whether it passes or not, doesn't play into the next couple of budgets anyways.
Not from a substantial financial, right? It won't change the net operating surplus deficit, but we will want to show that revenue coming into the budget. And then basically transfer right back out to the debt service fund, because the debt service fund is gonna have their tax that's in front of you will be reduced by $3 to $3.5 million. And then we'll use the additional PTEL to pay the debt service. So those, again, it won't change the bottom line, but you'll see that activity go through because it's just coming in and back out.
So I guess looking a little bit further ahead, if it doesn't pass, what do we need?
Well, I think we'll have to have some discussions on that. I think we know, which we've been stating for the whole record of year after year after year, even with taking the regular what's allowed of an increase, we're so deferred in our maintenance of our bricks and mortar and natural capital that we'll end up slowing down of what we're able to do. And that means things won't get repaired, and that means things will get closed, and that'll mean things will end up it'll have a rolling effect. And so we'll have to have those discussions and prioritizing which things happen.
What's the maximum PTEL again that we can do on an annual basis?
Well, 5 is the maximum.
Right,
And this year, we're looking at 4.6 is what we levied.
right. We were just under 5. Yeah.
And I say that you can go over 5, but then you have to.
Black box.
Yeah, I mean, it has to be within PTEL.
Yeah.
So if inflation was 5 or above, and you had new development, then you could see a 6 to 7% increase.
But that, as you recall, our discussion of why we advanced the question now, so we can plan. This is not something that was thought of just in a vacuum. It's been year over year of very strategic discussion on wise use of investments for the district to take care of these.
And the retirement of the.
And the retirement of the debt.
Okay, so thank you, Andy.
Yep.
I'll go to 6.3, first reading of the personnel policy and procedure manual. Who's gonna?
Okay, so what we have in front of you, I pulled this one out. For those board members that are new that haven't gone through our policy process, we go through a 2-stage reading, a first reading, which is allowing for discussion, any questions, changes, and then we'll advance it for a second reading if there's no substantive changes, and then to amend or to approve the amendments that we're making to this. So what you have in front of you is the personnel policy and procedural manual. Jenny Hyder, our HR manager, is here, and she led the efforts to go through. We have sent this on to legal counsel. And so there are several areas that are being updated. Some of them are internal just for operational efficiencies. For example, the first one that was on training, right now that left the threshold that anything that was above $750 had to come under my signature. Again, my purchasing authority, our purchasing policy is much greater than that. So we're recommending that it is assigned by the directors of the different divisions, and then anything over 1,500, which is still a lot lower than our purchasing threshold, but for conferences and training. So that's the change being proposed there. Some wording that was required on personnel file, and then just some clarification on telecommuting, just to define that. And then there is a change to the Whistleblower Protection Safety Act, just some wording related to retaliatory action. On bereavement leave, currently our policy allows if there is a loss in the family members that are for the policy, we provide 3 paid days unless you are traveling over it's 200 miles, right? For funeral services. We are just recommending that just be straight 5 days available versus the distance because, you know, that just didn't seem to make a lot of sense as we went back and reviewed that. For jury duty, again, not a lot of our team members get called for jury duty, but if you do, you are required to be present. And what we had in the past is you had to get your payment from the jury duty and reimburse the district, and the amount of tracking that down and all that paperwork. We're just saying, go ahead. If you get called, you keep the jury duty pay and you'll still get paid. Right, so that's the change there. And then there were some cleanup in our appendix on the information systems on IT that we cleaned up, non-discrimination, anti-harassment. Again, additional wording added to prohibit harassment and discrimination actions towards reproductive rights and family responsibilities. Again, changes in the law. And then the whistleblower, which is part of another appendix too. Anything else, Jenny, that we want to highlight?
No, I think that can go.
Any questions?
Yeah, we got a little bit confused in the bereavement when I looked through it. We say 5 days, but it doesn't say per occurrence. Because later on, it talks about a maximum. So those two seem to be in conflict. So you may just want in where it talks about 5 days, just add the words per occurrence for family death, whatever word you want to use. So take a look at that, Jane. Thanks.
Thank you, Lloyd, on that comment. Anyone else? So we'll take a look at that. And if there are any other questions that you happen to have before then, let us know, give us a call. Otherwise, we'll package this up and then have this available for second reading at the December meeting and acceptance. Thank you, Jenny.
Okay, we'll slide into 7.0. Elizabeth.
Okay, let's see what I know here. What we've got going on. Okay. Well, in front of you, thank you, Caitlin and the marketing team, Sarah and design here. We've got a beautiful new 2025 calendar. So great photography. It's awesome for all the volunteers and individuals and community members that are out on our sites. They capture a lot of these photos and share with that, and what an amazing, I mean, they're right that are experiencing everything and are willing to share their photography with us, and that's not a cost for paying to have this photography. This is the true thing, right? So again, great job there. Winter Landscapes is out. I think I mentioned that from before. I know our operations team has been winterizing in areas. And we've actually got the ski trails, solar lit trails are ready to go. So when the snow hits, but they've got some dates established, but that's at Pleasant Valley and I think we Grove Highlands, and they've got some special events in some other areas. So that's all within the landscapes. We were Friends of Hackatack Tuesday evening. They held their annual partnership meeting. A lot of celebration there. We'll bring that back at a future meeting, just to acknowledge formally like we do. But Kim Compton, our education visitor services coordinator, I don't remember her title, she was recognized as their hero for the volunteer work that she does. We also had Gil Hernandez, right? And Gil was nominated for Volunteer of the Year and has been working a lot with the Latino community and outreach and volunteer work days, which has been spectacular. And he also then just got elected to the Friends of Hackatack board, which was awesome. And then, of course, our foundation was there and they received special recognition, with the Tamarack Award that they provide. Open Lands did, as well as the Conservation Fund and the Audubon for their contributions to the large acquisition that took place last year that connects Glacial Park to North Branch. So that was a lovely night, and had the opportunity to thank those that were there. And I got another shout out to our Vote Yes committee. Foundation is meeting tonight, so that was going on. They moved their meeting because of this, of the Friends of Cackletack meeting on Tuesday. There's a hike with Mike on Saturday, so anybody who wants to join us at Harrison Benwell, that'll be at 10 a.m. And we're there. And then there's also, I know Shauna had requested board members, if you're available, they will be making phone calls to all the donors and anybody that would like to lend your voice to make phone calls to many donors that would be helpful. And that's pretty much, I'll be up tomorrow. We've got the Chicago Wilderness Alliance Congress in Northwest Indiana. And we'll be preparing December, and I'll keep everybody informed as we all wait patiently. Go ahead.
Cautiously optimistic.
Obviously optimistic, but optimistic is the word.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Public comments, number 2.
I'm not seeing any raised hands on mine.
Okay, thank you. All right, I guess then we'll go into executive session. Anything else need to be brought before the board before that?
We're good to go into executive session.
Second.
Here we go. Motion to move into executive session in a second.
Treasurer Zimmerman,
Yes.
trustee Zeller,
Yes.
trustee Leahy,
Yes.
trustee Zurich,
Yes.
trustee Wazorek,
Yes.
vice president Everard,
Yes.
president Dom.
Yes. Okay,
Right, and there's no action after.
thank you
executive.
for all coming.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, you want to read the,
I need to do roll call, please.
okay,
President Dom,
here.
vice president Everard,
Here.
treasurer Zimmerman,
Present.
secretary Wazorek,
Here.
trustee Leahy, trustee Zurich,
Here.
and trustee Zeller.
Here.
All right.
We
Go
were in executive session pursuant to 2C1 personnel, 2C2 collective bargaining, and 2C1 review of closed session minutes of open meeting day. 5 Illinois CS 120. Whatever that means. Anyways, we're good.
Give me a second.
Second.
Who was the first?
I was
You were.
first by reading.
I wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
Okay, trustee Leahy,
Yes.
trustee Zeller.
Yes.
Trustee Zurich,
Yes.
secretary Wazorek,
Yes.
vice president Everard.
Yes.
Treasurer Zimmerman,
Yes.
and president Dom.
Yes.
That was good. So now we-
38.
Oh, wait, no, that wasn't adjournment. That was just to go over the executive session.
Oh, my gosh.
We stated, so we.
Sorry,
No, that's okay. So that's where that's at. That was what that
I'm
was.
gonna hurt. Hey, we're good. I can do it again.
Okay, now we need a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Make that motion
I'll second it.
Second by Rob.
Okay. Treasurer Zimmerman,
Yes.
vice president Everard.
Yes.
Secretary Wazorek,
Yes.
trustee Zurich,
Yes.
trustee Zeller.
Yes.
Trustee Leahy.
Yes.
President Dom.
Yes.
Now, 6:39. We're out.
He's adjourned. Yeah, right.